All right, welcome to the first summer meetup from NonDutch. We are super excited to have had this opportunity to share our office with you guys today, and we're equally excited to share the information, all the cool web-related information that we have with you guys the rest of the evening. And my part of the show is going to be about Chrome DevTools. But before that, I want to do a quick poll. I've been working on this tiny little real-time polling application as an effort to learn React and Redux. And I call it Browser War, and I want to use it right now to sort of visualize how many of you guys are using what browsers on a daily basis, okay? So if you guys can help me out, for those of you who have the QR code scanner, please scan that QR code. For those of you who don't, please visit the bit.ly link, and it should take you right to the app. And I have the result page of the app over here. As you can see, we're battling with 5 browsers: Chrome, Firefox, Opera, Safari, IE, including Edge. If you're using Edge, vote for IE. And just click on the browser logo for your vote. I see many Chrome stuff coming in.
Can you show the link here?
Oh.
From your phone, so those.
There you go. Okay, so the votes are coming in. The thing is shifting around. That shows you the percentage of the uses of the browser in the crowd, okay?
You can vote it twice in the same round.
You have to open it up on the new tab, because
I can test Chrome one more.
oh,
It said I click once, it said my vote.
yeah.
And I click twice, it said again my vote.
Oh, because you're probably already in the result page with my vote. Although there is a trick. You can use it, you can not. It's just a simple app, right? Like, but if you open up a new tab, it's going to allow you to vote again because it's working with session storage. So is everyone voted? Wow, we got 4. Oh my goodness. It's an Edge and including everything. I just did not have icon, so I just put it IE. Yeah. All right, so let's move on, okay? So looks like Chrome is a clear winner here. Well, very close to IE, but anyway, that's great. So many of you guys are already. Somebody's doing the IE with the new tab, and I suspect it's David over there. He's been doing that all day. Anyway, so I think we can just subtract this with -10. But anyway, it looks like Chrome is the winner. So obviously for many of you guys, you are already using Chrome and DevTools on a day-to-day basis. But I still hope by the end of this talk, you'll have some new information on these tools that will make you kind of fall in love with Chrome DevTools all over again. So let's get into it. I'm going to start with a bit about myself, a bit of introduction. I'm Prashant Palikhe, and I come from the country of Nepal, which kind of looks like this. But I've been living in the Netherlands for the past 9 years, out of which for the past 6 years, I've been working professionally as a web developer. So over the time, I've contributed a little bit to the web community, so you can find me on Stack Overflow, or you can check me out on GitHub, or you can follow me on Twitter. I tweet mostly about web-related stuff, so if you're interested about that. And there's one more thing you got to know about me, and that is I really love the American sitcom Friends. With a raise of hands, how many of you don't know Friends? Yeah, that's what I thought. So everybody knows Friends, right? And Friends started airing in 1994, and 10 years later, the last episode was aired in 2004. And I've watched this whole thing well over a dozen times. So if we do a little bit of math, I've watched the entire 236 episodes of Friends with approximately 22 minutes of airtime over a dozen times, converted into days, gives me approximately 43 days of my life that I've spent only watching Friends. So it goes to show that I'm crazy about this series, right? And I used to watch Friends. I used to watch Friends on Netflix. Why? Because I loved the Netflix watching experience. You know, the episodes were easy to find. The navigation was simple. The subtitles were right there. And the best part was it would remember what I was watching, so I could come back and continue right where I left off. But Friends was only available on Danish and American catalogs, so I would have to use a VPN service provider to actually get around watching it. But then Netflix started cracking down on VPNs, and all of a sudden I could not watch Friends on Netflix anymore. So I'm like, fuck Netflix, right? It's like, that's bad Netflix. So I thought, like, if I'm not able to watch Friends using your service, there's no way I'm going to pay for it. So that's what I did. I quit the subscription. But then I started missing this Netflix watching experience. And I had an idea. So I'm a web developer. I know JavaScript. I can code a little. So I could work something out that mimics this Netflix watching experience so that I can watch Friends the way I want it. So I thought, let's build an app, and that's what I did. I built this tiny little app called Friendsflix. If you want to check the source code out, it's on my GitHub. And it's still a work in progress, but it does everything that I want to do. Let me just give you a quick demo of the app. So it's a mobile version of the app, of course, because I like to watch it on mobile. So you got the catalog over here, the episodes and the season. You can quickly search it. You can start playing it. And when the episode is playing, if you want to go away, you can bring this in right here, and you can start watching the other episode, the pilot in this case, if it plays. And you go back. Well, the best thing is it also knows what I was watching the last time. So I was watching the pilot, so I can continue right where I left off. Why am I talking about this app? Why this history? Well, the thing is, I've created this like buggy, less performant version of the app that we're going to use in the rest of the session. We're going to use the Chrome DevTools for the rest of the session to find these issues, fix them, all the while learning about the tools that are available in the DevTools and the productivity tips and tricks that are there, okay? So let's go. How are we going to approach this? So let's imagine a real-world scenario, right? You just created an app, and it went to production, and everybody's super happy. You are super proud, and then all of a sudden, the boss walks in, and he's not looking very happy, so he's super angry. And apparently, there are a list of bugs that we need to fix now, right? Now with 4 exclamation marks, so that does not look good. So what are we going to do is we have this bunch of Trello cards here. We're going to pick them one by one during this session. We're going to fix them using Chrome DevTools, and hopefully by the end of the talk, we'll have them all done, and we'll have our boss smiling again, okay? So we're going to start with the first card, so we're going to put it in progress. You see there are a bit of color codes in here. The green means there are performance issues, so we'll be diving into how to profile performance stuff using Chrome, and red are the bugs, so we'll be debugging these issues using Chrome. And there's one more thing that I need to tell. How many of you guys are using Chrome Canary with a raise of hands? Okay, great. For those of you who don't know, Chrome Canary is like this bleeding edge version, non-stable, every nightly build version that you can use to get all the greatest and the latest of Chrome. So you just Google Chrome Canary. That's the history. Oh. And you will end up in this page. Just download it. So you will get all the latest and the greatest experimental features and everything, right? But also the buggiest as well, so watch out on that. So we'll be using Chrome Canary right now, some of the things that are not available on stable build. And we're going to be using experimental flags. So you need to turn developer experimental flags on by going to Chrome Flags. Yeah? And just look out for developer. And then over here, you can see developer tools experiment. That needs to be enabled. And what that does, once you enable it, is like if I go to this one. So we've got settings over here. And you get this experiments tab over here, right? So that's great. You can try out some experimental features. So like, for example, I've enabled CPU throttling, which may come back to later. And layers panel, which I'll show later as well. But what many people don't know of is like, you can click 6 times shift on this feature, on this tab, So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then more features pop in, right? So now you can even be on the bleeding edge of the bleeding edge. This is like super experimental stuff, but you can try it out right now, okay? So we're going to be using some of these as well. So that's really good to know. It makes you feel like a wizard. Like you're on a team, you hit this 6 times, and a whole lot of things pops in. So that's great. So we're going to now go to the first card, which is make the app load in approximately 1 second. That's like the go-to number, I think. What's fast? The load time should be approximately 1 second. That's fast. Okay, so the boss said we got to make it load in approximately 1 second. So let's go. This is about load time performance, right? Load time performance is all about how fast your application loads, not just the initial HTML, but all the assets that come with it. It's about how fast the browser can create something visually useful and render it on the screen, right? And whenever I'm trying to profile these kind of performance, load time performance, my go-to tab is the network tab. And network tab tells you a story. Everything that happens from the point that the user clicks enter on that address bar till your application is fully loaded and even beyond, right? So there's a lot in here, but I'm just going to go through briefly the things that I like, keep my eyes on, and things that I use. So up here is the film strip, and it shows you the frames that the browser builds as browser creates as it's building your application. We'll see it in a while. You can turn it on using this thingy, so you can see the frames. We'll see how we can use it later. And you have some filters here that you can use to filter the result in this pane over here based on the resource type. For example, if you're interested in AJAX requests, click here. If you're interested in JavaScript like that, you can hold the command button and you can select multiple filters if that's what you need. So I got these, okay? And then in the end, you see over here, that's all the network activity that happened on your application. At the bottom, you have some summary stuff, how many requests the application made, how much data was transferred. So let's see. We need to make it load in approximately 1 second. Let's see how it loads right now. So I'm going to go ahead and reload this. I should do it while in the network panel so that it can record the frames. So it says it's recording frames. Looks like it's really slow. All right. So if I click on it, then it shows me the frame. 5 seconds later, underneath you can see how long it took to create this frame. So 5.5 seconds later, the user saw a black screen. So that's not really useful. You can navigate using arrow key now, so you can go further on the frames. So a little bit later, they saw the logo, and like almost 6 seconds later, they saw something useful on the screen. So yeah, the boss was right. Like, we have some problem with the loading of our application. So let's dig a little deeper. What's happening here? Well, this panel shows you the list of all the network activity, and if I zoom in a little, just click on it and you can zoom in. I can already see there's this long green bar, and that's not good. We see there is something wrong with this resource, and it's a script tag. And when something like a script tag is slow, it's usually a bad sign, and I'll tell you why. So when the browser receives your HTML, it starts parsing your HTML top-down and starts building the DOM, the in-memory representation of your HTML. But when it's building the DOM, whenever it sees the script tag, it goes like, hey, this is a JavaScript. It can do nasty stuff. So until this JavaScript is downloaded, I'm going to stop parsing everything. I'm going to first download the JavaScript. And once it's downloaded, executed, parsed, and executed, then I'm going to go on with building the DOM. So you can see how it can go wrong, right? This is a script tag, as I can see from here. And if I hover over here, it shows me more data. And it tells me that the browser was waiting almost 5.5 seconds, doing nothing else but waiting for the first byte of this script to come in. That's not good. So that's where the best practice forms in. You've all heard of it probably, like put the script at the bottom of the body so that you don't hurt the parsing, you don't hurt the browser rendering, right? But this is an Angular application, and Angular application needs all the JavaScript to be downloaded and executed before it can bootstrap and then form the UI and render it onto the screen. So we cannot really fix it by just bringing it down the body. But there is another tag that we can use, a relatively new tag on the script, which is async, that can help us out here. So I'm going to go to the source code. I'm going to go to index.html, and I'm going to put an async script here. And while on the network tab, I'm going to reload this page. And we're going to check the frames again. So the browser spinner is still going on. But we can see here, within 492 milliseconds, there are useful stuff being rendered on the screen. So what happened? Like, although the browser still took like 5 seconds and the spinner was shown, useful stuff was shown on the screen. And this is all about perceived perception, right? Speed. User thinks it's fast because they perceived it to be fast, because they saw useful things happening on the screen much earlier than before. But why did async help us? When the browser sees this async tag on the script, then what async tag is telling the browser is like, hey, I'm a JavaScript, but I promise you I won't do anything nasty. So you can go on doing your parsing while you're waiting for me to download. You don't need to wait for me. I promise I'll be good. So the browser continues its parsing. The browser continues its progressive rendering while the script is being downloaded. Okay? So that's why we see this, like, after 500 milliseconds, something is already happening. And still, we got this long green line, but it doesn't matter because the application was way over 1 second mark. The application was fully rendered on the browser. So it looks like we fixed the first issue using the network panel, right? So we're going to move it to done. And there are some other useful stuff that I like to mention here, which is like you can right-click on it, and there are more things that you can see about the network activity. Some of the things I like is the cache control to see if your resources are being properly cached. And other things like size, you can see the size. And if there's a difference between the size, that probably means your text-based assets are gzipped, like properly compressed. You want to send compressed stuff down the wire. And one thing, like, for example, one cool thing is like, let's imagine like you have a website and it seems to be slow because of some third-party script. Now you can just right-click on it and you can block the request URL. So next time you reload the page, the browser won't even make a request to this URL. So it's like it's not even there. So you can quickly test, like, is the third-party script affecting my website or stuff like that. You can block the whole domain if you want. So that's briefly about the load time performance. So let's move on to the second card. Is everybody with me so far? Great. The second one says searching is too slow. Okay, so we're going to put it in progress. Let's have a look. All right, so is that the case? So I'm going to type in something. All right, that feels laggy. So yeah, so I typed something in, and then way later something showed on the screen. Now this is the render performance, right? Runtime performance. And runtime performance is all about how fast your application responds to user interactions, like how smooth your animations are, or are there jank when the user is scrolling through your web app, things like that, right? And whenever I'm profiling into these kind of things, I do that. My go-to place is the timeline panel. And timeline panel, using this panel, you can record every event that happens in your application and analyze it. So we can use this to see what's going on, what's taking so long. Something is happening in JavaScript. Something is jamming the UI thread. So let's go ahead and check that out. I'm going to click record. If the DevTools is with me. Let's try it in a new tab. Oh, it's really slow right now. Okay. All right, this is not working out, so we're going to move on to the next one. We're probably going to get back to it later when it's a little bit more stable. The third one is make side menu animation buttery smooth. Still runtime performance. It's about animation. But whenever I'm profiling things about when something is moving on the screen, my go-to spot is something that's a little bit hidden from the panel. So what you got to do is you're going to click the escape button, and this drawer pops in from the bottom. And then there is this rendering tab. And that's what I am interested in when I'm trying to debug animation. let's take a little bit of a pause here because I'm going to do something else here. Now I'm going to be changing the source code a lot. So I don't want to go back and forth to my editor to do things. I just want to stay on the browser. Now Chrome allows us to do that, so I don't even need to leave the browser to get my application developed, right? So what I'm going to do is while I'm on the source tab, I'm going to find my code. I'm just going to bring it in and drop it. So it asks for permission, sure, allow it. Now you can see that my project is here. And while I'm there, I'm going to map one of these files, like let's map the controller to the system resource. And Chrome already suggests the proper one, so I'm just going to use it. As you can see now, this folder is directly mapped to my source code. So I can change things on the browser, and it's going to be immediately updated the source code. That's great. So about the animation. Now this thing is really stuck. The place I go to is this plain flashing tool. I'm going to turn this on. Now let's see what happens. So when I'm doing this, you see the flash of green, right? And what that is telling you, what that is showing you is all the things that the browser needs to paint every time an animation is happening. Those are all the work. Now generally for the animation to feel smooth, you got to try to stay around 60 frames per second. And for every frame, the browser needs to paint this whole screen, and that's a lot of work, and that can be good. Basically, the rule of thumb is like if you see a lot of paint happening like this using this tool, it's generally a bad sign for animation. You want to avoid that. How are you going to avoid that? I'm going to show you right now, but let's understand how this thing works a little better. So when the browser has built your DOM and it's going to paint it out onto the screen, everything is on one layer. It creates an image, basically, of your application, right? And it uploads it to the GPU. GPU splits it out to the screen. So you got this one layer. Now this drawer, the side menu, is moving in. So every time it moves, it needs to recreate this whole page. That's what we're seeing with the green paint area. It needs to recreate this whole page every time and upload it to the GPU, and then it gets split out onto the screen. So that's a lot of work. What we want to do is this moving part, we want to separate it out on a separate layer. So it looks like this. And then instead of painting everything, we just want to make a call to the GPU to just move it. Just cheap movement calls. And then the GPU can just move it on the x-axis and everything should look good. And we can do that on many of the browsers right now. So I'm going to show you how that works. So basically, this is about, oh, can you give me some water, please? Dying with thirst. Is it there? All right, so this is about drawer. So I'm going to find the source here about the drawer. Thank you. So this is about the drawer. And I just showed you about these layers. This layer is called composite layer. Okay? And the way you can promote an element into this composite layer is by doing many things. You can use position fixed in the latest versions of Chrome that also promotes an element into a composite layer. Or you can, previously we used to use hacks like translate, transform, translate Z, 0. You probably have seen it here and there in the source code or use it yourself. It's also used to promote a layer into its own separate layer. The newer API is to use the wheel change transform that tells the browser that it's going to be changing its transform value, so promote it onto a separate layer. What I'm going to do is, I already have the correct source code working over here, so I'm just going to remove this, uncomment this out where the proper code is running, save it, I'm going to reload it, and since it's already mapped to my source code, it's already changed in my source code, so we can verify that. So if I go to drawer, this is the new code. It already changed on the disk, so I don't need to, I'm not going back to the editor again. So let's open the paint flash again and bring it back out. You see there's no green flash. So what happened? We brought the drawer into a separate layer, and we can visualize this better using Chrome, and that's using this experimental layers panel. So on this layers panel, you can see all these layers that I'm talking about, the composite layers, all the layers that are in your application, you can see it right here. And you can also navigate through it on the left. So you can see drawer is apparently a separate composite layer. And Chrome tells you why it's composited into a separate layer. Here it tells you it's because of the CSS 3D transform, right? We use translate Z. Position fixed is compositing it into a separate layer. Will change is compositing it to a separate layer. Now that's great. It's being composited into a separate layer. How it's going to help our animation? If you move it, you can see it move on the right, this green part, and there is no paint calls being made. And that's really cheap. That's what I look into when I'm trying to profile animation. You want to bring those moving parts onto separate layers and try to move cheap stuff like transformation, scale value, opacity, things like that. And that the browser can do really cheap. All right, so that's about the animation performance. So what we're going to do now is we fix this issue, so we're going to put it to done. Let's try to get back into the searching is slow part, the flame chart, because I don't want you guys to miss that. So let's try it out again. So we are here on the application. The searching was too slow, and we saw it because we typed in, and it's too slow, right? So let's see what's happening. So how you use the flame chart is you just start recording it, and you type something it, S-O-M-E-T. You type something, it still didn't record. That's a pity. It's not working with me right now, so we're going to continue again, okay? All right, so what we've done so far, we've used the network panel to profile the load time performance, and we tried to use the timeline panel to profile the runtime performance to see where the problem lies in the JavaScript, and we've used the different rendering tools to make our animation faster. That's what we've done so far. So hopefully I'll still manage some time to get back to this timeline part, but we'll see how it goes. Great. Everybody still around?
Maybe you can try to reset the browser. Sometimes better to speak to the Chrome.
You mean kill the whole browser?
Yeah. Reboot the application and open it again.
Okay. All right, let's kill this. So that was on. We're just going to start recording now. Yeah, that looks a bit better. And type something. Stop recording. Now, if everything goes well, we should be able to see this flame chart. Now, this chart shows us everything that happened in your application when some event occurred in your application. We typed in something, so we see that the key press happened, so we see these 4 blocks of key press, right? And vertically, what it means is all the functions that invoked other functions. So the depth of this bar is not something that signifies the performance problem. The horizontal length is, because that indicates the length of the execution of your function. So we can see that key press event, if I hover over it, it took around 360 milliseconds for it to respond to a click, to a key press. That's not good, because usually for your application to feel instantaneous, it needs to respond within 100 milliseconds. So that's not good. We definitely have a room for improvement here. So what we're going to do, we're going to go down here and try to see what's the problem. So we can see that this one function is being called a lot of times over here. And we can see this long-running function that is named suspiciously weird is doing a long stuff, right? So we're going to click on the long-running function. And I'm just trying to show you guys like how you go about finding the bottleneck, right? So you click on the long-running function. It shows you the name of the file, where it's coming from. You click on the file name. And then here, that's definitely the cause of the problem. We were trying to search, and we did some intensive loop that took around 305 milliseconds to execute. And the Chrome is nice enough to tell us right here. So what we're going to do is we're going to just get rid of that long-running function, save it. We save into the source code, and we're going to reload the page. And then we're going to create the timeline again. Wow, the DevTools is really screwing me today. Anyways, let's see if this searching is fast. So I'm going to type in something like sonogram, and that fills a lot faster, right? I type in something, and it immediately represents on the UI. So what we did was we found this bottleneck using the timeline view, and we fixed it. And now we know for sure that the UI thread is not jammed while we're typing something. That's why it feels more responsive. All right, so we can bring this out into done as well. Now let's move on to other stuff, which is side menu can be dragged within the viewport. So let's see if that's indeed true. So we have this home page, and he says that the side menu can be dragged and all the way inside. Oh yeah, that's not what's supposed to happen, right? So that's obviously a problem. So we're gonna try to find it. Now my usual process of how to deal with this situation is like, it has something to do with touch, right? Because I'm touching this thing into the screen. So I'm gonna use Command Option F on Mac, and this turns out this panel where we can search through the entire source code. So all your source code can be searched. So I'm going to search for touch move because it's related to touch. And it shows me that there are these files that are using touch move related code. And drawer, that's where the issue lies, so that immediately becomes suspicious. So I'm going to go to sources panel, hit Command O, and that shows you this tool with which I can just search for a source file really fast. So I'm going to do drawer.controller, and it's going to take me to draw controller, and now I'm going to hit Command-Shift-O, and that shows all the methods that are present on this file. So I'm going to go to touch move because that's what looked suspicious, and I'm going to put a debugger in here. So we're going to see what's going wrong. So let's bring that out, and as expected, it stops there, right? So we're going to go through it. On touch move, we are getting the current touch coordinates. We are calculating the directions. We're trying to find the previous touch, and something to do with update. It's all looking nothing suspicious, but there is a request animation frame callback for update. So we're going to put a debugger there, see if that does anything weird. Translate X value, you can hover over it to see what the value is. That looks good as well. And then we're updating the style and putting another callback. But these all look good. Now the thing is, when the program stopped on this debugger, it was in a good scenario. The error was not there yet. Error only happened when the drawer entered the screen. That's the problem scenario, right? So how can we use the debugger but still let the code run until we reach to the error scenario? So that's what we want to do now. So what we're going to do is we're going to put the debugger, and we're going to edit this debugger. And now we can set some conditions for the debugger. I'm going to use this trig called console log, and I'm going to log my translate X value. Now, with this conditional debugger, it's going to stop here only if the value inside evaluates to something truthy. Console.log always returns undefined. So it will never stop here, but it will just allow us to check what the translate X value is. So let's start this again. So we have the console log. And then we're going to bring it out. And we see all the log values, and the debugger never stopped, right? So this is the conditional debugging. And let's see what happens when you bring it all the way out. OK, yeah. So immediately the problem is like the translate X value is more than 0. That means the drawer is going to be inside the viewport. So we're going to go ahead and fix that. On the sources panel, let's just uncomment. We're going to get the minimum value of its maximum can be 0 or negative value. That's going to make sure that it stays in the browser. Let's reload the page, bring it back in again. That's it. So yeah, we fixed this issue. So I showed you a bunch of shortcuts here, like Command-Shift-F is really cool to browse through your source code and search for some string. Command-O to fuzzy search your file, like this. Command-Shift-O to look through all the methods in the file. And then conditional debugging, super useful. All right, so we can set it to done as well. And then head on to the next one, which is body's background color is not the same as the header. All right, let's see if that's true.
These are only the canary version of the...
No. Some of them, like layers panel, I think it's actually already on the stable build, but many of them are already on the stable build, so you can use it right away on the stable build as well. So let's go ahead and fix the body background color. So it says that the background color is not the same as the header. And it does appear to be a light shade of black, so we're going to go ahead and fix that. I'm going to use this tool to select the element where the background color is wrong. So yeah, here's somebody has set it to be 222 while the header seems to be dark black, right? So I'm going to do something really easy. I'm just going to click here on the color, and this color picker comes out, and now I can pick any color from the screen. So I'm going to click the color of the header, super easy, hit enter, and it's automatically saved in my source code as well. So if I reload the page, it's already black. So everything went fine. So there's something more useful. For example, if your team likes to use RGB values instead of hex value, you hold the shift and click on the tab again, and it converts into RGB values. If you're more interested about HSL, if that's the convention, it converts into that. And if just regular alphabets like that. So you can use these tips to quickly change the conventions of the color codes. So that one was an easy one, a quick fix. Moving on to the next one. Continue watching button does not do anything. That's weird. That's like the highlight of the show, and that's not working apparently. Let's see if that's true. If I click on this one, nothing is happening. Okay. I'm going to inspect this code. So we get to the button, and the button is supposed to, on the click, button is supposed to run start watching. I'm going to use Command Option F again to search for start watching, because that's what I'm interested in. Now, there's one thing you can do. You can immediately click here, and it takes you to the source code right away as well. So on this start watching, I'm going to set a debugger and click on the button again. And the code never came there. So obviously, something is going wrong there. Now, what I'm doubting of is, does this button even have any event handler? So there's how you go about checking that is console has this nice API called get event handlers, event listeners, and that expects a reference to the DOM element, the element that you want to check the event handlers for. Now, previously, you would do like, how do you get this DOM element? You could do document.querySelector with the class name like current trigger, but there is easier way to do this, which is $0 alias. If you type in $0, it gives you the reference to the currently selected element in the elements panel. It goes beyond that because you have $1 as well. So what's $1? Right now I have button selected and it's $0, right? I select another one, $0 becomes the new selected one. And $1 becomes the previously selected element. It goes all the way till $4, okay? And then you got this shortcut called $_, which shows you the value of the currently evaluated thing on the console, which is this button. So $_ is the same right now as $1. These are these handy shortcuts. Now let's mix these two together. So we're going to go back to the button. We're going to try to get all the event listeners for $0. And it shows us an object, which directly inherits from the object constructor. So there's no event listener here. So that's the problem, right? So what happened? We're going to go back to the source and try to see what's going wrong here. And for the Angular guys, I think that the error here is kind of obvious because Angular asks you to use ngClick. And here, some dumbass did mgclick. So of course, it's not going to work out, right? So I'm going to change it to ngClick, save it, reload the application, and we're going to inspect the event listeners again. So get event listeners for $0. That gives us this click array. So $0.click is an array, and it has a listener, and that gives us this listener, reference to the listener function. Now, we can track out. Now we can start debugging this listener function if we want. Let's see if the continue watching button is working. So if I click on it, there is an event listeners, and it does its thing. So that seems to work. Another easy fix, so I'm going to put it to, actually, by this time, if I change the background, the boss is actually starting to be a bit happier because we are moving more and more stuff towards the done. So the last one is there. The side menu moves vertically when it opens. Why? So let's see if that's true. So we got the side menu here, and He says that it's moving vertically. So how can we check that? Can you guys see if it's actually moving vertically? Okay. Let's slow it down a little to see exactly what's happening. That you can go to animations panel down here and slow the speed of the animation to 10% of the speed, or 25 or 100%, and then close it out. Yeah, so that's definitely moving down, right? So let's see what the issue is. We're going to use Command O. Go to drawer, because that's definitely related to drawer. And we're going to try to find, okay, yeah, when the drawer is visible, it's being brought down to the y-axis by 12 pixels. So we're going to remove that to 0 and fix it. So save the page, reload the application. Wow, DevTools. On the day of the advertisement of DevTools, it's so slow. It's incredible. All right, looks like I need to kill this tab as well. All right. Let's see if we fixed it. Yeah, that looks a bit better, right? Slow it down, staying on the one line. Yeah, so that was the last bug that we fixed. So if I move it to here, our boss looks super happy. He looks so happy that he actually changed his colors as well. And he actually lost his hair. And actually, in my previous talk, I said the same, and my colleague over here, David, had a view about it. He went to a vacation, he got a lot tan, and with all the beers, he dropped all his hairs or something like that. So anyway, he seems to be very happy because we fixed all the bugs. So that was it. So we looked into multiple areas of problems that occurs in our real life projects, right? And we use the DevTools to find those issues, and we use them using different kind of tools to fix those issues as well. Now, before I end, I have some pro tips that I want to leave with, which is, I'll just quickly go through this right here. So console time end. Like normally, when you want to profile like how long your function is taking to execute, you do about like var start time equals date.now and all that stuff, and find the difference and show it in the end. But there is a better API to do that, which is console.time, and you give it a name like something, and then you do console after your function is called, some long-running function. You do console.timeend, and then you use the same name. And what it does, it gives you the delta. It gives you the execution time between those two marks. It's super easy to profile the execution time of your functions. And we all know console.log, and we've used it a lot of times, but we also got console.warn. It gives you things in color, different colors. This is useful if you don't want to show your logs as errors all the time and you want to group it into warnings, information, stuff like that. And then you got console.group. If you have a lot of console and you want to group it in a meaningful way, you can start a group by doing console.group, some group. And then you can start logging stuff. It's going to be grouped inside that stuff, so you can just minimize it. So if you have a lot of logs coming out from your application, you can manage those logs this way. And to end the group, you can just do console.groupend group. And that's going to end your group. So you have console.table. So console.table needs some, you can look it up in the console API to get a better view of how it's working, but how it essentially works is in log, you're just logging this data, but when you use table, you can get a tabular representation of your logs. And you got inspect. This is the opposite of $0. $0 showed what was being inspected, but inspect is going to show whatever is being inspected in the elements panel. It's like the reverse of $0. And we also got debug and undebug, which I find very useful. So before, we did the trick to get the event listener, right, from the DOM element. That was like listener, so we did using the get event listeners and $0, and it has a click listener, so we can get the reference to the listener using get event listeners $0.click, which is an array and has a listener. So our listener is now referencing to the function. So what you can do is use this handy little function called debug. It expects a reference to a function. And now every time that function is executed, it automatically puts a debugger onto that function. So if you have some production code that you can't really change, but you need to quickly debug that, you can find a reference like this and start debugging the function. But you don't want it to go there every time you're running your function, right? So what you then do is undebug, use the undebug, pass the reference again, and it's going to stop the debug every time. It's going to stop the debug from this point on. So similarly, we've got monitor and on-monitor events. In a similar situation, for example, you're in the production code and you want to see what kind of events are being fired, what the event object looks like. You can do things like monitor events and pass a window, for example, a window object, and you want to check out what happens when the scroll is happening. In this page, you cannot scroll. Not this page as well. So you do this. Let me just scroll. Okay. So monitor events, window, scroll. And when you scroll, then it bumps out all these scroll events that you can quickly monitor. But you don't want, you can check what the event object looks like, check what's useful for you, and do your thing. But you don't want it to be there every time. So what you do is you unmonitor events, window, scroll, and it's going to stop dumping out these events. Useful sometimes. And then you got this sensors API. I've been using this sensor API in the app as well, so that when the phone is put on the table, like displayed down, then it stops playing the video. And it just quickly gives you the alpha, beta, gamma values of your device orientation. So you can use these values in your event handler and use it however the way you want to use it. Useful stuff. And finally, I want to end this with snippet. I find it really useful. For example, in Chrome, you got this snippet panel within the sources panel. And within snippet, you can create a new one and put some arbitrary JavaScript code in here. And that code is going to be executed whenever you want it, just doing right-click, run, and it's going to run on the current window. So I have some things like Loadashify. If I want to quickly put Lodash in the current web app, I just do run, and it's going to put Lodash in there so I can start using Lodash functions. So that's super useful as well. And what makes it even useful is like there is a GitHub repository with lots of snippets that are super useful to debug performance about Angular applications, your React applications, and doing all kinds of productive stuff. So those are actually all the tips that I have, all the things that, all the workflow that I usually go through while working with the DevTools. Now, what I want to end this conversation, this talk with, is how do you get updated with all this? There are so much things, and so much things are happening so fast that it's very difficult to update. The way I do it is, first of all, Twitter. There are guys like Paul Irish, who works as a developer advocate for Google, and he's tweeting about all these DevTools, the new stuff that pops out in DevTools very frequently. And follow him, and you'll be loaded with useful information. Eddie Osmani does the same thing, also from Google. He's tweeting a lot about developer tools. And Umar Hansa, I find him extra useful somehow because he's talking about the stuff that is bleeding edge of the bleeding edge. He comes with all these DevTools features that are going to be dropped next week. And so you can be prepared about that and start using those as soon as they drop. Other thing is the Chrome docs itself. You can find it over here in the help. It takes you to the most updated documentation. If you Google it, there's a chance that you end up in a little bit outdated information page. But from here, you go immediately to the most updated version of the documentation. And lastly, GitHub. There's this repository called Awesome DevTools, and they have numerous tips that you can use on a daily basis, and they're immensely useful. So that brings me to the end of the talk. And I hope that you guys will live tonight with some new information about the DevTools that you guys are happy to learn about. Thank you very much for listening.